Hello and welcome to a webinar on the future world of work. My name is Guy Gordon and I am the Executive Director of Innovation and Service Delivery with the Province of Manitoba, the Department of Central Services. I am pleased to be here today to present this webinar as part of a collaboration between the Province of Manitoba, IPAC, the Institute of Public Administration of Canada, Manitoba Region, and SAS. With me today are Jessica Drackle, who is representing in her capacity as president of the IPAC Manitoba region, and Jeff Koziak, who is one of the key representatives of SAS in the Western Prairie region. It's going to be my first pleasure to introduce Jessica to come and introduce you to IPAC Manitoba, and who is our core key sponsor. And over to you, Jessica.
Thanks, Guy. This is a great opportunity, I think, to have a virtual version of a very successful workshop that you and Jeff hosted for us in December. So we're very excited to be able to bring this to the virtual world. And I'm just here today to chat a little bit about IPAC Manitoba, and thank you all for coming out to the webinar. IPAC Manitoba is dedicated to celebrating, learning, and engaging with people interested in public administration in Manitoba. So it's part of the IPAC national regional structure. And if you don't know about IPAC, you'll want to look it up online at the Institute of Public Administration of Canada. And there's a little brochure here in the webinar. It talks about some of the benefits of being a member of IPAC, participating with IPAC. And there's networking benefits, professional development, expertise sharing benefits, access to members-only resources, job opportunities, and lots of events, such as this one. So I'd like to thank both Guy and Jeff for being here today and looking really forward to seeing the virtual version of our workshop from December. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Jessica. And just so folks know, the reason that this topic came into being in Manitoba goes back to this past summer, the summer of 2019, when IPAC hosted the national conference in Winnipeg, and one of the keynote addresses was on this topic. And what we've tried to do now is bring this topic back to the participants, the members of IPAC, and now to a broader Government of Manitoba audience to kind of let people know, with respect to these really interesting ideas, what's going on in Manitoba, with the goal of engaging our dynamic workforce in thinking about some of these ideas. So the purpose of today is to expose you to some of the things that are going on in Manitoba and in other jurisdictions, with the hope that more and more people become engaged in this one particular element of the government's transformation strategy. So let me begin with moving to the first topic. And really what I want to focus on in here is this presentation, and I want to talk about three topics. One is going to be robotic process automation. Second is going to present something that's on the horizon, digital assistance. And the third topic is advanced analytics. And that's be an area where I'm going to transition over to Jeff, because the organization he represents is a world leader in that capacity. But what I want to do is talk about what's really coming to the province of Manitoba, and that is a change in mindset, which drives a series of new behaviors, which drives a new public sector culture in Manitoba. And again, for those of you who are aware of the transformation strategy that we've been working on collectively over the last number of years, the core concepts behind digital and the transformation strategy are very closely intertwined. And I'm going to give you a quick example of what I mean next. So I imagine that in this audience listening to the session today, there may be a number of you who are participating currently in the Apolitical Digital 101 Boot Camp. For those of you who started participating this January, and there's 500 plus Manitoba civil servants who signed up for this, I know that you're enjoying this session that's being co-sponsored by Apolitical and 8 governments across the country. That's the federal government, Manitoba, Ontario, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, Yukon, British Columbia, and if I forgot one or two, that's okay. But you get the idea that this is a collaborative effort amongst the digital transformation offices, of which Manitoba now has one, which is led by Dennis Batacan, who is the Executive Director of Digital Enablement in the province. The point I would like to make about this is that it embodies the spirit of a different mindset and a different culture. This particular session that's been put on, and 500 of your colleagues are participating, is really about doing government work differently. Firstly, this is occurring at no cost to any public servant, something which the Premier and our taxpayers are very happy about. It was developed as a pure collaboration between the 8 parties. It's being delivered on a platform that we can all use and access from work and at home. It is an innovation in that we are being agile. This came together very quickly. It took existing information. It took a little bit of spirit of collaboration, but was very quickly put together and is being delivered to over 5,000 public servants across the country. The focus of this session is really to allow people who are interested in digital government to learn what it is, find some best practices, and have an opportunity to collaborate and dialogue through this vehicle and find people who are interested in common ideas. So it's not very difficult to access, but it does meet the kind of core concepts of digital in that it is a model that I would say checks the box of being cheaper, faster, and better. And that, I think, are sort of like the trademarks of digital. So this represents a shift. This didn't require anybody's permission. There was no extensive series of questions asked. It was an opportunity that was seen to be at our doorstep, and we jumped all over it. So just using that as one of the examples of the digital shift that we're into. So in terms of how this digital shift impacts on us and what's going on in the future, one of the interesting things is to recognize that a lot of work is being done by various organizations, including Deloitte, various governments across the world, to talk about one area of change, and that is how we as civil servants and our jobs are increasingly going to work with machines in a different way. So many people have heard the story about robots. The robots are coming. They're all going to put us out of work. Well, after a little bit of hype, I think we're starting to realize that that's not exactly what's happening. However, what is happening is we're seeing a lot of interesting opportunities to think about how we work and what we do as humans versus what machines can do to help us get better value. And this work has been led by various organizations. The one on your left, the CPA, is a very interesting paper that was done that basically spoke to those of you who are accountants, professional accountants, and basically is setting the expectations for the kinds of changes you can see in the accounting and finance profession, which is very relevant to government, and you'll see in next. These other examples come from areas where government plays a huge role. In the social services and childcare space, for example, or as a regulator, or in the criminal justice space. These are all examples of how jobs are changing and work is changing as we introduce and leverage more technologies. What I would like to say and what I'd like to say is all of these challenge our notions of the status quo of the traditional government work, where huge parts of our work are tied up with a manual, repetitive, and quite frankly, non-value-added tasks. If we're able to shift those to some degree away from our traditional day, that's going to free us up to do things of a higher value. And that's really what the next few minutes are going to talk about. How is that actually playing out in the province of Manitoba, and how you can start to think about your work and the people you lead. So let me start by introducing you a new coworker. I want to show you this video, which is only 45 seconds, and I want you to pay attention to the expression on the face of the traditional office worker displayed in this video. So, just for a moment, I want you to think about what you saw in that video. Just think about a couple of the facts here. What you saw was an example of robotic process automation, a very simple example of data entry. But the key points that were illustrated by that video are the speed by which the robot, as it's called, was able to do the data entry, the accuracy with which they were able to do the entry, and the level of happiness by which the robot was able to do this versus the employee. You could clearly see that this individual was not finding this to be the best part of her day. So process automation is simply a software that allows developers to build robots. This software allows us to do the predictable, manual, and routine repetitive tasks that we do every day with our computers. The robot does this by simulating what people do with the computer. And these are the basic things like clicking on buttons, launching applications, typing keys, reviewing information, entering data, etc. I like to call this the workarounds. This is where we have to work around all the limits of either our paper or our current IT systems, and we try to make those two things mesh. And people spend a lot of their time in this space. Where we're going, what we've done here in Manitoba is we have launched this. And one of the reasons we've launched this effort to build this capability speaks to the direction that we're being given by our political leaders. And this particular slide speaks to the speech that the Premier Pallister provided just after being elected for the second term. And I'll get you to just take a moment to read this because it really speaks to the challenge that's ahead of us. As you can see, the key words here are, we remain committed to returning more money to Manitobans who may work so hard to earn it in the first place. We have made great progress, but there's still more to do. From a clear commitment for what the government was elected on, this government is clearly trying to find other opportunities for efficiency and cost savings. And in this particular space, this area of government is ripe for change. And in part, the introduction of robotic process automation was to tackle some of these traditional problems that we have. The benefits of robotic process automation are quite clear. They are indeed more efficient in terms of allowing processes to become faster, and which improves their ability to deliver services to the public more quickly. Robots tend to make fewer mistakes than humans because humans are, after all, subject to getting bored and data key entry kinds of issues. They are less expensive when deployed properly, and productivity is increased. The other benefit is that we are able to flexibly deploy these. So what we have, the graphic illustration you see on the left is actually an example of the before and after from one of our 3 test cases that we've successfully deployed in the province of Manitoba. This is from the Department of Families, and this is a program where dentists were submitting information for payment of their bills for services they had rendered to clients of the EI program. What you saw before was a purely manual process, and now we've introduced the robots to assist the individuals. And what we were able to find in this instance are that we were able to take the delivery time from 2 months before payment to 2 days. We were able to take the work of 3 individuals, FTEs, and allow them to do other more valuable work in the organization. And most importantly, what we found is that these employees and the whole organization, the morale and engagement has gone through the roof. This is a place where people were very happy to take this kind of work out of their day and get on with providing more valuable services to the taxpayers and their neighbors. So just a little bit more on RPA. RPA is definitely coming to the province. Here are the key areas where RPA is typically been deployed around the world, and here in Winnipeg at various companies. And the first and foremost area where there's a lot of opportunity is finance and accounting, and you can see it applies to lots of things that central services and other departments are involved in, and particular customer services. So what I'd like to sort of highlight is not only as have we gone in the province through a testing and validation process, but this service is now alive and well, and is now available to departments and programs. And you can get started by emailing us at rpa@gov.mb.ca. So we'll help you walk through the assessment, getting a sense of the scope, design, and helping you with the implementation. So if you're interested in knowing more, send an email to that, and we'll get back to you shortly. So I want to move now to the second topic, and this is now starting to get a little bit into the future, but not that far. And this is a video of a capability of digital assistance. When Jeff and I did this presentation live, we asked the audience, which made up of 50 of your colleagues, how many of you use a digital assistant in the home? And over half the folks raise their heads and say they actually have a device in their home. And for the rest of us, we have this device on our phone. So whether it's Siri or Alexa or you name it, these things are pervading our lives. Many of us ask our activities to be transacted, whether it's ordering a pizza, whether it's calling a radio station, or just getting Google to play or answer homework questions for our kids. So this is becoming really quick. I want you to look at this in terms of how we deliver government services. And the first thing I want you to know is which one is a digital assistant and which is the client. Have a look. I want to go one step further and talk to you about another potential user experience that's a little closer to the world in which we live in. This is a use case that's in deployment in various public sector organizations around the world, but I want you to have a look at what we're talking about. In this case, the user experience is for a fellow named Andy, or we could call it Jeff or Jessica or Guy. And they are a nurse at a local hospital, and they want to report an unscheduled leave. With one short conversation with Alexa, his chief is quickly notified and can find a replacement and properly serve patients. So this could be patients, this could be social service clients, this could be any number of clients that we have. So how does it work? It's basically, Alexa, I don't feel well. Please let work know I will be out today. Sorry to hear that, Andy. I will take it from here. Feel better. And what happens? There's the boss. Poor Andy. Thanks to this email notification, I can call Sarah and ask her to take the shift. So that's kind of now moving into voice-activated, no-touch government. This is not one stop. This is no stop. And this is being enabled by various components. A virtual assistant, a chat bot, an RPA bot, and a human, the manager. Well, how many of these things are actually things that are alive and well and and possible to do? Interesting, when we were actually shown the various pieces of technology that are required to make this happen, it turns out that the province of Manitoba actually has most of these tools. Not all, but most. And as part of the innovation space that the province is moving into, we are actually looking for a similar use case to test this. We will be looking for these type of voice-activated services just to begin to learn what's possible and how to do it. So just wanted to get you a sense of what is coming. Lastly, I'll just go to a little bit of the future in terms of where we're going. This ecosystem of capabilities is starting to present itself to various governments around the world, including the province of Manitoba. And this diagram just gives you a sense of the kinds of things we're talking about. So I know for some of you this is something you may be familiar with, but start to do a little bit of research on your own in these areas. So we have things like the arms and legs, which is the robotic process automation. Voice happens to be chatbots, of which we are BTT is beginning to pilot. Natural language processing is how we listen, and there are use cases across the public service starting to work in that space. Optical character recognition is a technology the province currently uses, and better tools are coming and being tested as we speak. And then, of course, there's the how we as humans start to use all these pieces together. And you can see also that as I turn this presentation over to Jeff, who represents SAS, SAS is one of the leaders where data analytics is being used to process what they call cognitive services, matching the brains and the eyes. So I want to just transition this over to Jeff now, who will walk you through his presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Guy. Appreciate it. So, as Guy mentioned, I'm going to be walking you through a number of topics that help lay the foundation for some of the things and the possibilities of those things in the government. So, what we're going to be speaking about today is the Government of Manitoba's priorities. What does a policy analyst do? What is AI and what it is not? Where is AI already being used so that you have some examples of those use cases and maybe can articulate them into your work? How could AI change the work of a policy analyst, which was one of our audience members at our previous events? And then how to get started. So with that, let's get started. So let's first start off. I took this or created this pie chart specifically from the Government of Manitoba's budget. And very simply, I put it into what are the priorities for the Government of Manitoba? Where are they going to be spending their money? And then throughout this presentation and this talk, you'll see that I've got some examples on some of those very large focus areas. So let's first start off. When I was asked to do this presentation, I thought, let me re-educate myself on what exactly does a policy analyst do. They develop government policies and provide advice and briefing to ministers and senior management. And how do they do that? Well, they need to evaluate things. They need to do a lot of research. They need to look for that evidence-based facts so that they can gain the confidence in whatever recommendations and support for those recommendations that they need to do in order to supply to the ministers and senior management so that they can act on that information and that advice. The trouble with this is that in a lot of cases, the people in these roles don't have access to all of the information, and they don't have access to it in a very rapid manner. And so what I've learned is that they are often racing against the clock, and then they are stressed out because they are not, due to the short timing, they're not confident on what it is they're recommending. I'm not in all cases, but certainly we want to create more confidence. We want to make sure that those recommendations are the right recommendations. So that left me with a few questions, which we asked our audience with when we did a live session was, how do you do this today? Where do you get the data? And how do you analyze it? What tools do you use to analyze that? And do all of those things support you doing this in a very short order? So we're going to be talking about some examples of how other public institutions are doing this in short order and creating that confidence. So before we jump into those use cases, let's quickly review what AI, artificial intelligence, is not. So I'm sure everyone recognizes at least a few images on the right-hand side of this slide. You got C-3PO up at the top there, Ultron, Matrix, all of these things of science fiction. And that's truly what they are. They are science fiction. Sure, they're entertaining for us, but this is not where AI is at, and this is not what AI is at this point in our history. So, I asked the audience previously when we did a live session when they thought AI had first been created. And some of them mentioned that, well, in the last 10, 20 years. It was actually created as a potential process back in 1950. The problem is that there was not an access to a large set of data. So data sizes were small. The other component, there's three key components, was the variety of the data. These days, we don't, have a problem with variety of data. The third piece was the actual compute power. Compute power was incredibly expensive back in 1950 or non-existent. And so, although this was a great theory that computers could be created to act in an artificial intelligence manner, it could not actually be realized because it was the technology and the progress of that technology had not matured to the point of being able to capitalize on it. However, with the advent over the years of the enhancements in computer technology, the number of devices, especially since 2010, you can see that on this graph on the bottom, you can see exponentially the compute power, the variety, and the data size. We all have devices, right? We all have smartphones. We all have, Fitbits and all these different wearable technologies. We all have a computer in our house, right? Thanks to Bill Gates and Apple for realizing that, gee, if everyone had a computer in their house, what would that create? So all of this advent of technology and the use of it has proliferated and really enhanced the use of artificial intelligence because these three things have been increasing. Moving along, you might be wondering at this point, well, that's great, but how do we, as humans, differ from machines? So, very simply, humans are good at these things: common sense, intuition, empathy, creativity, and versatility. Whereas machines are good, as we saw in Guy's example, machines are good at large data sets, complex calculations, and that automation piece, right? Which is where that robotic process automation piece is coming in as his example. These are things that machines should keep doing and allow us humans to focus on taking action from the results of the processing of those machines and focusing on each other, focusing on the people aspect of it. So this is the first of a few examples of where the public sector is leveraging artificial intelligence. So I'm not going to read this screen to you, but I am going to speak to it. this is an example of where artificial intelligence, visual artificial intelligence, is being utilized in a hospital setting, and a radiologist needs to analyze the results of the scans. And when they do this on their own, the study found, this one that I'm referencing, the study found that when radiologists are left to do their job, they have an accuracy rate of diagnosing cancer of 70%. However, when that radiologist's work is augmented with visual analytics, that accuracy rate jumps up to 91%. I think this is a perfect example of where humans are focused on the outcomes and what to do with those outcomes, and allowing the machine to augment their accuracy in diagnosing and then taking action. The second example is with the Republic of Estonia. So if you're not familiar with, back in the early 1990s, Estonia became its own country with the fall of with the fall of the Soviet Union, pardon me. They found themselves a new country with approximately 1.3 million citizens, about the size of Manitoba right now, but they didn't know anything about their citizens, and they didn't have a government to create proper policies. They didn't know where to invest their tax dollars. And so what they immediately decided to do was start learning about their citizens. What were the demographics of their citizens? Who are they serving? What programs do we need to concentrate on delivering? What services do our people need? And where are we taking this newfound country? And so this is a use case. The hyperlink is at the bottom of this example, and I invite you to further read about this. It's a great example of where an entire country, let alone a province, but an entire country has digitized and used data analytics in order to better serve their citizens. Additionally, I've learned of a podcast. It is a TED Talk, and the hyperlink is also below on this slide. And I invite you to view that. I believe it's 18 minutes in length. And it talks about how the Republic of Estonia had, in this reference, digitized their entire government. There are only 3 areas, if I'm recalling this correctly, 3 areas where Estonia has not digitized: birth, death, and actually picking up your identification. Every citizen in Estonia has their own unique identifier, and they actually have a law that says no part of government, a department, a ministry, is allowed to ask for the same information more than once. So if one department or ministry has already collected data on that citizen, their address, something very simple as an example, their address, their phone number, no other department or ministry can ask for that information again. It's already been collected. So this was an example of how an entire country has been digitized, but is also leveraging each piece of their government. So I invite you to explore those links. The third example is that of the LA County government, and the hyperlink is also below. I invite you to review this one. This one was rather interesting because they were providing a number of programs, as governments do, but they really didn't understand what programs were working, which programs were not working, and they had a lot of duplication of services and obviously costs related to delivering those services. They needed to understand what services were better utilized, what services were overlap, and they actually did this by using SAS and data analytics to analyze which programs were working and where they could reduce costs, and they have delivered that. So not only have they improved their services for their citizens, but they've reduced the cost of delivering those services. Another great example. So, my vision of what the policy analysts of the future should be empowered by technology use, should be data-driven, leverage all sources. They should be confident in their recommendations because that confidence is going to reduce their stress. We don't want people under stress. We want them being comfortable in their decisions and their recommendations. I'm sure the executives and ministers want those people making recommendations to be confident as well. We want them to be able to be quick and responsive to the ministers and executives. And we want them to be connected to the citizens through social media and external data sources. And this last point is very important because it is being used, data analytics is being used to gather sentiment in a lot of different facets, not only in the public sector, but also in the private sector. So you can gather using social media, you can gather the sentiment of your citizens or your patrons of your business and quickly adjust to that sentiment, take action before things become out of control or in order to capitalize on that sentiment. So you might be thinking, these are all great ideas, but where do I get started? Well, focus on these 5 things. Start small and then grow from there. Don't try and boil the ocean. Pick a little problem that you think that you can start with. A proof of concept. Maybe you involve an outside source like SaaS. Work on that small problem and expand from there. That will build your confidence on using data analytics. Focus on the real problem. Maybe ask yourself, what keeps my minister awake? How do I address that for that minister? Connect to the analytics. Make sure that you are getting connected to that data so that you can better leverage that data. Create trust in the artificial intelligence and believe in humans. This last video that I am going to leave you with, that I'd like you to watch, is from New Hanover County. They are located in the United States. They are a client of SaaS. And what they've done is they have integrated the use of data analytics to identify where their child and family services workers, where their policing authorities need to focus their attention on which high-risk children in their care. This is a very powerful video, and it is a great example of where government can work together in order to better their citizens. Imagine what you could do if you knew where to focus your attention on that day at that moment of time. And that intelligence is being provided by the use of data analytics so that the people can focus on the people. It's a great video, and I invite you to watch that.
I'll never forget that day. The scene was pretty ugly. There were many, many law enforcement and individuals because the baby died in a vehicle. The mother that was driving the vehicle did not have a driver's license. Had we gotten an alert about that situation, we would have gone to that home and possibly that child would still be alive that died in that vehicle.
So when I work with families, you get what they give you. And sometimes you got to dig a little deeper. And through that insight, you can figure out what's working, what's not working, and what the root of the problem is.
We had such an increase in the numbers of children in our county from the opioid abuse. Children were coming into the hospital drug dependent. Children were being left alone when parents overdosed and died at the scene.
What's important that we need to keep focus on is keeping a healthy environment, because y'all can't get clean together.
In New Hanover County, we have one of the most active community child protection teams in the state. Our DSS, our public health, our schools, our law enforcement. We're looking for gaps in services that perhaps can be eliminated to make our community safer for children.
We need access to all kinds of data related to the child, the educational data, the past psychiatric issues of the family, and or the legal challenges that the family might be having. And without that data, social workers are kind of working in the blind.
We started looking for ways to better identify risk for children. I decided that SAS was the answer for our county and for many, many children.
Very quickly, in the SAS Visual Investigator, we're able to see a timeline and get a good glimpse at what the history is for the family. You can blow up almost in like a spider web type of scenario and see how many people have touched the life of each individual child that we've worked with.
We will get an alert if the risk level for that child has increased.
This morning I got a 4:30 alert from SAS. I looked at my phone and was like, oh no, what happened to one of my cases? I'm able to go in and track what happened, when, and who. That's powerful.
I'm thrilled with your progress. I really think you're going to be at a place where we can say, we're done.
You can have a couple bad weeks, but that one case that is successful and they are happy and they're in a good place, then you can say, job well done.
You've come a long way. I'm so proud of you, so we're going to take a minute and celebrate now to celebrate you, okay?
I wouldn't do this if I didn't care. Seeing these families overcome those obstacles, seeing them triumph, seeing them happy, that's priceless.
So I'm sure you appreciated that video. In closing, if you would like to learn more information about what it is that you saw and heard today, I invite you to contact one of these three people, Guy Gordon, who you heard from, myself, Jeff Koziak, I'm with SAS, and Jessica Drackle, who is with IPAC, and all of us would be happy to assist you. Thank you very much for joining.